We back. We back. It's Jake's Takes time. How's it going?
Wolves back.
Wolves back. Never doubted them. You know,
Never.
our first podcast of the season when they lost to the Raptors by 3 points. And we questioned their abilities after Towns went like 7 for 25 at like 10 turnovers. Ant was like 7 for 28. Had several turnovers himself. Gobert actually played pretty good in that game. They lost to the Raptors 97-94. Who would have thought that that game would actually be the recipe for success through the first 7 games of the season? Because they're playing defense. We did. Exactly. Yeah. So
well, I mean, it's been nuts. Yeah, I believe we have the number 1 defense, right?
We have the number 1 defense. We've held like 5 teams under like 100 defensive rating, and
even like the
NBA world, that's really good.
Yeah, Celtics were averaging 125 points a game. I think we gave up 109 in overtime. Yeah, Gobert's doing his role. Ant and Jaden make up quite the 1-2 defensive combo. Mike Conley's no slouch. Alexander Walker's no slouch.
Did you see what Anthony Edwards nicknamed Mike Conley?
Was it like Big Bite or something?
Bite.
Bite?
Yeah, because it looks like he's going to bite somebody.
Oh.
Which I think is actually pretty accurate. Like, after he said that was his nickname, and I look at Mike Conley's face, he just looks like a little, like, rapture or, like, I don't know, one of those,
Rapture or rapture? Because the rapture is like, isn't the rapture when like Jesus comes down and
there's that, and then there's like the raptor, like that.
So raptor.
Yeah, like raptor. I think I said rapture, but
you did.
Like raptor.
I wanted to make sure that Minnesota Tim listeners knew that you weren't calling your shot on when the rapture would be.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that you weren't predicting something that you didn't want to predict. That's all.
Well, I think God's going to allow a Minnesota team to win a title first. I think if a Minnesota team does win a title, well, then it's a
good time to hang it up.
Yeah. It's a sure time of the end times. Like, there's no greater evidence than if the wars, famines, earthquakes. Okay. I'm not, you don't have me sold on anything yet. But if a Timberwolves or Twins or Vikings organization, even the Wild, I mean, what the heck? Throw the Wild in there too. If somehow they win a title, then I know for sure it's like, okay, it's going to be over pretty soon.
Do you think it'd be, what if it was the day before?
I've seen memes like that, like 2 minutes left on the clock. Vikings are up by 20 points in the fourth quarter. And then you hear the horns coming from heaven and the angels coming down. And we don't get to see a Vikings championship. Well, maybe we can see from heaven, like maybe we can gaze down and watch.
Can you imagine, though, if, like, Diggs on the sideline, caught 20, 10, and then just it's over.
PA rises up mid-call. He's just not there anymore.
Tough.
He fades out.
Yeah.
But lots to talk about. Wow, do we have a lot to talk
talking about the rapture on your Minnesota Tim bingo card. You can cross off that one on your bingo card.
Yep. As expected. It's on the rundown. Yep. We like to surprise everybody. But lots to talk about this week. Josh Dobbs, Timberwolves,
Twins payroll, Wild.
Twins payroll. Man, so much to discuss.
We're not goons. We're not bullies. No matter what people say or do, we have to be ourselves. You.
Guy Germain.
From where?
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Les Averman, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota.
Charlie Conway, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
And I'm Gordon Bombay, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yeah! Minnesota! From the lakes of Minnesota.
But first, I need you to check out Hoagland Farm. because they have rotationally grazed 100% grass-fed beef. It's beef season, everybody. They sell this beef in quarters and halves, and they have custom sample packs so you can try before you buy. This beef has no medications or antibiotics, and you get 20% off your first order if you tell them you heard about Hokeland Farm on the Minnesota Tim podcast. All you have to do is contact Jared at 952-491-1541. That's 952-491-1541. They have a Facebook page, facebook.com/Hokeland Farm, and they have an email, hokelandfarm2012@gmail.com. Again, 20% off your first order if you tell Jared you heard about him on the Minnesota Tim podcast. All right, Jake, let's start with Josh Dobbs. Doesn't know the playbook, doesn't know the plays. Everyone knows the story by now. Trade from midweek. Jaren Hall is the guy that they're preparing. He gets hurt on the second possession, is immediately ruled out of the game after, looking lethargic on the field. Josh Dobbs steps in, fumbles twice, takes a safety in the end zone. It's just looking like garbage season. His highs were high, his lows were low, but somehow the Vikings escaped with a 28-24 victory or something like that.
Yeah, what was it?
Was it 28-24? 27-24? I feel like it's a field goal game because it could have went overtime. Like if Falcons were, I think it's a field goal game. Let me see.
I wish you had a computer in front of you that you could find the answer.
38-28. Wait, no. 31-28. Oh my gosh. I see the score and I still can't speak. 31-28.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Because I made a joke in our group text saying this game has overtime written all over it. Then the Falcons scored a touchdown, not a field goal, went up 28-24.
Yeah.
And then I was like, never mind. And then Vikings scored a touchdown, 31-28 with 22 seconds left. And then Andy says, this has overtime written all over it. So I thought that was kind of funny.
It was.
Anyway, so your reaction to all the action?
I mean, it's been talked about, but it's what Josh Dobbs did. I feel like even though we are talking about how underrated it is, it cannot be more overstated how underrated it was. Like to show up on Wednesday morning to get essentially none of the practice reps because Jaren Hall's getting them all because he's never got any reps before this either. So they're putting all their effort into Jaren Hall, who has never really practiced as a quarterback one, obviously. Dobbs is just learning some names. He gets the playbook in his hands. He's staying after practice with one of the offensive coaches just to work on stuff, talk about stuff. But, he's not preparing to play, really. I mean, he's just trying to get his feet wet, so that he knows a little bit about the offense. And in the future, if Jaren Hall stinks, whatever, maybe Josh Dobbs goes in. Second drive, he has to go in. I mean, you said everyone saw it on the sideline, right? All the linemen huddled around Bradbury and Dobbs, listening to how Dobbs says "ready, set, hut." Right, the
cadence of the calls,
and then again, this is rehashing a lot of what people have seen, but just the idea, like, I don't think we appreciate how this never happens, and especially if you want to play "woe is me," right? This never happens to Minnesota fans, where something good, again, the last time remember the Josh Freeman game? Yeah. I mean, that's what I think of when it's like you throw in a guy who, whatever, out there,
This is the type of stuff that typically happens against the Vikings. Like, think about all the backup quarterbacks, since 2003, 2004, I think it was, when Josh McCown knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs, PA's famous no call. And then, you got like, even last year or the year before, Cooper Rush from the Dallas Cowboys comes in, defeats the Vikings 14-7 or something like that. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, and again, O'Connell in the headset talking all the way up until 15 seconds because he's basically saying, all right, on your right, you're going to have Addison on a deep curl and Osborne on an out. Otherwise, just run. Or, he's explaining what to do and what to look for. Because not everybody, but people have different offenses, different terms, different. Obviously, a lot of them are doing similar things, but Some use route combos, some use numbers, some use, there's different naming systems out there. So he, it's not a naming system Dobbs had used,
It
or
makes
it
me
was
wonder
specific.
how he communicated the plays to the players, like, because he doesn't know what these plays are. So, but you would think O'Connell would have to communicate the plays in his headset and like to remember. I mean, I guess he's like an air guy, like aerospace engineer.
He's
or
an
something like
aerospace
that.
engineer, yeah.
So I guess, I mean, maybe memorizing, like a 10-word play call on the spot from O'Connell, maybe it's not as hard as it would be for like me or something.
Probably not. And to be fair, right, he did, by the sounds of it, he was studying that playbook Wednesday through Sunday. He did stay after practice with coaches. Like, he was at least familiar with the concepts. It's just he wouldn't have everything memorized. It just he understands what the formation calls are, what probably the passing route combos are a little bit, the protection, all that stuff. Like, he probably was vaguely familiar with all those terms. It would just be like, if he had to take a test on it, he probably wouldn't, remember them all, kind of thing. But so yeah, to put all that together, the way it started with his 2 fumbles, which both were pretty well, the one was kind of forced. The other one was just completely careless. He just dropped the ball. The safety was kind of weird and dumb. And now they put him in a bad spot, but still, like, the way he handled that play was kind of weird. So yeah, it didn't look good. And then he rallies. I mean, that 4th and 7, even, I think it was 7, when he like scrambled around, basically got tackled, almost got tackled again, got like 20 yards. I mean, there was multiple plays that game where like, there's no shot here. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
And even that Addison catch was like phenomenal catch on the sideline. I mean, that was a big boy.
Oh
catch.
man.
Everything had to go right to make that happen. And that just doesn't happen with a backup quarterback. Now, I did hear a couple people on fan line say, like, let's not re-sign Kirk Cousins. Let's just Josh Dobbs for the next few years.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you in on the Josh Dobbs for the next few years?
No, I'm not in on Josh Dobbs for the next few years. I think I think, like, it's so easy to be like, man, just wait till he gets the playbook down. Just wait till he gets familiarity with these receivers. Just wait till it all comes together. Then this Minnesota Vikings team is going to be a Super Bowl team. JJ comes back. This team's going all the way. I think it's so easy to get caught up in like this crazy victory and think about all the things that could happen next. But I think, and it's not guaranteed or anything, but I think we could see a similar Josh Dobbs to the Atlanta Falcons game for the rest of the season. Like, I think he's a quarterback that has these high highs where it's just like, oh my gosh, is this Michael Vick out there? Like, this is a play that Minnesota Vikings have never seen from their quarterback before in the history of the franchise. Maybe Fran Tarkenton. And then he's going to have these plays, which happened 3 times against the Falcons. Whether you know the playbook or not, it doesn't matter if you fumble twice or like take a safety in the end zone. Like maybe the safety in the end zone a little bit, maybe the fumbles a little bit, like maybe you would have got rid of the ball sooner, just being comfortable or whatever. But I feel like that's just the type of quarterback that he is. Like, he's going to make these incredible jaw-dropping plays, and then he's going to make a play where it's just like, dude, WTF, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's reasons he's been on 7 teams or something like that.
Right.
Been a career backup. Like, many, 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 many different people that looked at him and go, yeah, he's got some potential. He's got some skill. He's worth having on a roster. Obviously, an incredibly smart guy, hardworking guy, but he's not a consistent, like, we can't start him as our guy, right? I mean, so there's truth to that. This is probably, for being honest, this will probably be the highest high we have all year.
Oh, absolutely. There's no way that gets higher than this.
Right, and that doesn't mean he's going to play significantly worse, but that's probably the peak of his abilities is probably what we saw on Sunday. So, no, I think the Kirk Cousins injury, now it obviously hurts us this year. We're not going to be not that we're going to be a Super Bowl team anyway, but the odds of making a playoff run are obviously significantly lower. But I think it makes next year's plan a lot easier in theory. Yeah, I think it's a lot easier to say, Kirk, you're coming off an Achilles. Let's bring your number down a little bit. Let's sign you for 1 or 2 years. Let's draft a quarterback in the first round. And now you have a much easier transition plan versus, having to sign Kirk to a huge number. I think you'd think it would come down just a little bit to maybe where the Vikings and Kirk Cousins can meet. Say, hey, this roster is too good to literally tank. So let's have Kirk. Let's be a good team for a year or two. Let's have somebody in the wings that's not a 25-year-old Jaron Hall. Get somebody younger, more, potential, I guess would be the word. So that makes next year's plan, I think, easier. Now you still got to pull it off, but for this year we'll ride Dobbs and it'll be a roller coaster of games, I'm sure, because we're gonna definitely lose one that's like he's 12 for 27 throwing the ball. He has 112 yards and 2 picks, and you're like, what are we? What is going on here?
Yeah, what happened to last week? I thought he was going to get better in the system.
It's going to happen. And now his rushing is nice, though. It is fun to watch somebody who can run, just because weird things happen when guys can run. It just always does. And obviously he's not like a Michael Vick sprinter kind of, Jalen Hurts level kind of guy. But just you saw, that 4th and 7, not that, Kirk, it's completely different. He probably, he's throwing guys open, whatever. Kirk's not scrambling for that first down probably. Dobbs is athletic, which is fun. It reminds you when we haven't had that in a while, it's fun to watch somebody who can just make something out of nothing by using legs. So
when Josh Dobbs was scrambling, it was like Mike Conley was bite his ankles and like he was just getting away from him. That's kind of how it looked like. Bite was trying to get him in his ankles, but.
Well, speaking of lower numbers, are you as offended as, I know neither of us are huge Twins fans, but we can spend 30 seconds on, doesn't it just seem stupid to drop your salary by 20 to 30 million when you
I wonder what the motivation is behind the whole thing. Like, why? Like,
well,
you had an incredible season. You won the division. You impressed everybody after being led by a couple starting pitchers. The Jorge Lopez guy was a beast. Some hitters really stepped up at Byron Buxton's absence. And now you're going to cut it? Like, trade Buxton all you want. Like, maybe that's how they're going to cut it. But, like, to get rid of top players or not re-sign pitchers after having the season that you had, that's a little deflating.
It is. It's very deflating. Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things where that they will tell you it's, it's part because their budget, right? They do other budgets and because salary, there's no salary cap. So the money is coming from the franchise. So whether, their profits, that's how they justify it. But it's one of those things, well, just maybe, they're making money hand over fist, just maybe make a little less for a year or two because you're competitive. When you suck, sure. Cut the salary because you're going to suck anyway, right? Who cares?
Right.
But when you have this window of like our team should be just as good next year in theory, or similar, add a player or maybe just bring back the same guys and run it back or whatever. Because I forget which pitcher. One of our best pitchers is a free agent.
Yeah, I think it's like Sonny Gray or something.
Is it Sonny? Yeah, that sounds right. I couldn't remember if it was Sonny or that's how quickly the baseball season goes out of my brain, but yeah, I think it is Sonny though. So I think, right. Because he's going to ask, he's going to require a lot of money. Is that where they're looking? Just, hey, we're just going to not sign that guy. It's like our pitching staff was finally respectable for the first time. And now you're just going to let it walk. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Transitioning back to the Vikings real quick.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. With JJ coming back, I want to hear the perspective from an offensive coordinator. Not only an offensive coordinator, but a successful offensive coordinator. Logic would say when JJ comes back, the Vikings offense is going to be even more explosive. Addison has emerged as like a 1A, 1B wide receiver in the NFL. Hawkinson finally woke up from his coma after, taking the first few weeks off the season, dropping passes that he should have caught in the end zone and just going down the field. Hard passes to catch sometimes, but highest paid tight end in the NFL, you probably should catch that. So I feel like the Vikings offense is waking up. The Vikings are 4-0 without Justin Jefferson. When he comes back, is there extra pressure on KOC to make this even more explosive than it is right now? And how do you incorporate the best wide receiver in football back into an offense, yet keep the Addisons of the world just as involved as they are right now?
I don't think it'll be challenging. mean, you have because I mean, I don't know. Like KJ's not going to play this week, and granted, I don't think JJ's playing this week either. So we'll be hurting a little bit on Sunday receiver wise. I mean, you're going to see a lot of Brandon Powell and Jackson, whatever that guy's name is. I forget his first name. Number 9 with the dreads. Tristan. Yeah, you're right. So it'll be funky this week for sure. But I think once JJ's back, it's just easy to go back to what we were doing. And if anything, Addison's the number 2 probably. He's not splitting time with Osborne as much. It's a 1-2 punch, and Osborne's kind of that extra guy. Or Powell is. Powell's not bad either. So I don't think it'll be very hard. I think, it'll be just fine.
Okay. Do you think, speaking of value and like Kirk Cousins' Achilles injury, the Vikings are 4-0 without Justin Jefferson? Speaking of contract situations and value to a franchise, I said the other day, it's like LeBron left the Cleveland Cavaliers twice and they went in the tank. He left Miami, they're a shell of themselves. Anywhere he goes, he wins a title. I feel like that's what value looks like. JJ goes out. You play the 49ers. You play the Falcons on the road. You play the Packers on the road. And then you play some other team, the Bears on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And you win all of those games. 3 out of 4 on the road. Does his contract take a little bit of a hit because of the success the Vikings have had without him?
No.
The
theory is sound. But I think if you're a statistics person and we're analyzing data and you're trying to figure out correlation, the correlation would not be here. It's just more of a happenstance than it is a direct correlation. JJ's pretty good, best receiver in the league. To your point, if you're trying to gauge positions of what is the most valuable to have the best player in the league, quarterback's obviously number 1. I guess I don't know what would be in that next tier.
Question.
Lineman, offensive.
I was gonna say left tackle, defensive end, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Safety and corners are always, the way teams pass now. That's such a huge, some sort of rusher. If you don't have an elite rusher, usually your defense is bad. But receivers, in that next tier of that second tier of importance, and running back is last. We all know that. So
right.
Sorry.
This is what it is.
Dalvin Cook. But,
sorry, RBs.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think he'll still be just fine getting the largest contract of all time.
Yeah. He still will get that. I'm not denying that. But I wonder if it comes down at least 1 million. Who cares?
Can you imagine sitting? I mean, you probably would, but sitting across the table from JJ, you're negotiating this 5-year, I don't even, let's say $200 million deal. And you're like, well, JJ, 5-0 without you. Can we at least knock it down to 199?
I know 200 sounds nice.
Yeah.
But 199.
Or even just maybe make the last million
incentive driven.
Yeah, Super Bowl bonus.
Yeah.
We both know we're not getting there. So
right. That's funny. Oh man, that's good. I think we should discuss the Timberwolves a little bit more because they've been rocking and rolling. They dominated the injured Pelicans last night on Wednesday, and Pelicans didn't play anybody. But the game of the year through the first 7 games of the season was on Monday against the Boston Celtics, went overtime, and the Timberwolves won 114-109, which Jacob mentioned earlier. And the defense has come alive, and it has become their identity. Last year, it seemed like they were missing something, and they were missing an identity. And you bring Rudy Gobert into a lineup, and he's acting like a shell of himself. And you're wondering, you're bringing this guy to be a defensive beast, and he's just not really beasting this year. And now, through the first 7 games of the year, this has become the Timberwolves' identity, which, if you're going to ask me, do you want the best offense in the league with a terrible defense or a great defense with a decent offense? I'm going to pick that second one all day long. So give me your thoughts on the success so far. Are you all in on the Gobert trade now? Or should we be slapping ourselves in the face or for saying this wouldn't work?
Yeah, I mean, I did see someone in a serious manner tweet, and I don't remember who, someone like some sort of minor character on Twitter where they're like a commentator, but they're not famous. Say like, we should, basically your point. We should all, be embarrassed that we said the Gobert trade was a loss. It's like, well, okay, let's settle down a little bit here.
Yeah.
But Gobert's playing.
You gotta love people like that, man.
I know, it just makes you laugh. Because they were serious too. That's why it was funny. But Gobert's been playing better. They switched the defense a little bit, so they're not just funneling everything to him and leaving him on an island. They're playing just a little differently to make that happen, which is working out well. Because at the end of the day, too, he is. I mean, he's 30 or something like that. I mean, he's not in his prime anymore. He is slowing down a little bit, so they're helping him out with that. Like we talked about, Ant and Jaden actually locking guys down. But you're right. I would much rather have the best defense in the league, because unless you're one of the worst 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, like everybody has an offense that can blow up, right?
Yeah.
Like the way teams can score now, the way teams can hit threes now, like you don't need to be number 1 overall in offense to be competitive. Again, you can't be the worst. Like some of those bad teams are just really bad, right? Like the Grizzlies without Morant, and the Jazz haven't been good. And, there's teams at the bottom that like probably won't ever figure it out, but probably 1 through, I don't know, almost probably, I bet 20, like can beat anybody on any given night because an offense can blow up. So I'd much rather have the best defense, which is where the Wolves are at. It's been fun to watch. Cat had an impressive 7, 7, and 6 against the Celtics, right?
Yeah.
He had 7 points, 7 boards, and 6 fouls.
Yep. Yeah, he showed up.
So I mean, that is the one. As obviously we give him a hard time. He is still, when he's at his best, he's one of the best. I don't know, 30 players, whatever you want to call it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever number, but he's he's a meaningful player. He still hasn't figured it out, though.
Man.
And it's so frustrating because, like, obviously we're hard on him, and he takes more of the brunt of it than, like, he probably deserves a lot of times.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I just meant because, like, at the end of the day, like, it's one of those things where, like, we're so sick of him. Like,
yeah, we
don't look at anything he does as great anymore when he does do something great, because we're so sick of the negatives that we've seen, like the patterns. Like if you traded him, like my point is, I guess, just like a new fan base would, like, they would see the good stuff that he does and be excited about it. And now it's kind of worn on us a little bit.
For sure.
So like his value is better than we think it is. I think around the league, I would hope. But again, I mean, the Blazers had zero interest in him, so who knows? But yeah, he still just hasn't figured it out. Yeah. And I don't know if it's, I mean, he seems to understand it's not his team anymore, I think, sort of. Like, I think he thinks he's a bigger part than he probably should be, but, it's Ant's team by a country mile, and it's not close. But he hasn't figured out how to be the 1B in a meaningful way really yet. And that's the part that's concerning, because, like, we're kind of winning often kind of despite him. So if you could, and again, you're not going to turn him into something else meaningful probably in a season, but whether he has to figure it out or you trade it or whatever, I mean, we're playing really well with Towns not playing well.
Yeah.
So can he, or they, the team as well, figure out how to use him so that, our max player is not looking like, just
Kyle Anderson or something like that.
Yeah, right. Giving you minutes Kyle Anderson stats basically, or whatever. So.
I think the Achilles heel of the Timberwolves season is going to be their ability to overcome their mental midgetness. And what I mean by that is there are several, even Monday night against the Celtics victory, you could see just how mentally midgety the team is. Gobert was like 2 for 11 from the free throw line. It was a tied 98-98 score with like 2 minutes and 13 seconds left. And they hacked a Gobert, and then he missed 2 free throws, got the ball, and I don't know what they did from there. But they purposely put him on the free throw line because he was off that night, and he couldn't overcome like his offness that night. Karl Anthony Towns, enough said. Like in that Celtics game again, he had like several offensive fouls where his arms are flailing and he couldn't control his body going to the rim. Same story, different day. Even Anthony Edwards, like the Timberwolves it was near the end of the game, and I think it was tied, and he shot 2 threes down the stretch to try to put the they were tough 3-pointers, and like to try to put the Celtics away in regulation. And he shot 2 threes. It's like you're getting to the rim at will at this point in the game. They can't stop you. Mm-hmm. You're amazing around the rim. Even mid-range, you've been feeling it. And you settle for 2 difficult 3-point shots to try to put the Celtics away. Jaden McDaniels, he's known to make stupid decisions at times. Mike Conley is like the one guy who every decision he makes on the basketball court, I'm like, that was the right decision. Like Conley always makes the right decision, and he's got some amazing stats to back it up right now. The first game of the season, he had a turnover on the first possession against the Toronto Raptors. And since then, 6 games later, he has not turned the ball over once. 199 minutes and 54 seconds since the last and only Mike Conley turnover of the season.
Tyus and Trey Jones would be proud because those two always lead in the assist to turnover ratio at the end of the year, so they'd be proud of Conley. But yeah, no, you're right. He's kind of the godfather, right? The grandfather. He's the only mature one, seems like, in the bunch, and he's kind of wrangling a whole bunch of immature kids. Now Towns at this point, right? There should be no excuse. I mean, you've been the franchise kind of guy for 8 years. Ant is getting close, right, to that. There shouldn't be excuses for you, but at the end of the day, it's year 3, year 3, year 4, year 3. He's 20, whatever he is.
I think it's year 3.
That sounds right. But point is,
I wish I had a computer in front of me.
Big scheme of things, right? Though he hasn't played a long time. He hasn't been in a whole lot of huge situations. Obviously, he's getting there. So the time is running out for him to make bad choices. But you can at least forgive him a little bit for that.
Yeah, year 4. Right. Like I said, year 4.
The maturity level of the team is still not quite there. Then you'd hope, right, another season of success, kind of like last year. Hopefully, that gets better over the course of the year. So, did you see? It made me laugh so hard because I mean, I feel like our team has such a diverse group of characters.
Yes, it does.
You have Ant, who's like insane and like loves basketball, but also just like, I think he only plays basketball because he's really good at basketball. Like, like who knows what else he would have been doing if he was good at something else, but he just ended up in basketball because he's just happened to be good at basketball. You got Towns, who's just thinks he's like, a Hollywood actor. You have Gobert, who's the random French guy, just kind of doing his own thing. You got Conley, the grandpa, just wrangling everyone in. Jaden McDaniels is just like, no emotion, he's just stoic.
Yep.
You got the Naz Reid phenomenon where like he's sitting on the bench and the crowd is chanting Naz Reid so loud he has to stand up and like acknowledge them so they stop chanting Naz Reid when he's not even in the game. And then what I was going to bring up was you got Slow-Mo, who also is just like a bizarre character. Did you see his I think one of the few games ago, it was like, explain why you picked the jersey that you picked.
Oh yes, I did see this.
The video.
I thought that was hilarious.
And all these guys gave up good reason. They're like, oh, it was my childhood number. Like, oh, my, it's our family's number. They're giving these reasons. And then Ant, he switched from 5 to 1 or 1 to 5 because that was his college number and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then Small's up there and he goes, somebody took number 5. And I remember, however he said it, but it was just like,
he's an interesting character. He played for the Chinese basketball team.
Yeah.
For the Olympics or whatever, for the Olympic qualifiers. It's like, why did you do that?
And just his game too, like he's the kind of NBA player, which this is going to be like sound like a huge insult, and I suppose it kind of is. His average, I feel like he averages just like in the NBA, right? It's like, kind of like 5 and 5 kind of guy. Like if you left him wide open all the time, like I'm not sure he'd score more than 10 points.
Yeah.
But he's never going to score 0. Like he's just solid, going to get a bunch of rebounds, bunch of assists, whatever.
Mhm.
I feel like if you put him in a random open gym game, he would be totally okay just still doing like 10, 5, and 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Like, obviously, I'm not ripping his skill. Like, if you put him in a random open gym game, he could score 50 if he wanted to. But just like his demeanor is just like, I'm just going to kind of go about my business. And
Totally.
yeah, I'll score 10 points on you, get 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and just call it a day.
Yeah, that's a great.
Just shrug at you while I'm doing it.
Yeah, I'd say that's a great way to describe slow-mo.
Yeah.
He's slow-mo. I mean, that's what he is.
But again, to be clear, if you did actually drop him in a random, because I feel like people like sometimes think they could like take on, I don't know, people are dumb.
Well, did you ever see like the Scalabrini one-on-one game? I think
Yes,
it's on YouTube.
yeah, like Scal, right? Because that's the worst of the worst NBA players. Like, were the best players on their college teams and averaged most of them 20-some points a game in college, and right, they would torch any random open gym. So
yeah,
Scalabrini. People think he's like, oh, he's so bad. It's like, dude averaged like 16 a game for USC for 3 years. Like,
yeah, he made it in the NBA. Yeah,
and he made it
not
in the
a bad player.
NBA.
Not a bad player.
No.
Anyway, did you have anything else to share on the pod? I think that's all the things I've got.
I think that kind of covers it. Yeah. Trying to think if we missed anything from last week. I don't think so.
Yeah, this was a big week. Big week. We could have previewed Jaron Hall, but like, Josh Dobbs. That's what we would have done last week. Talk about Jaron Hall and his expectations for him and stuff like that.
The butterfly effect is crazy, though. I mean, just one last. I was thinking about this. Like, if Jaron Hall hits Hawkinson on that little, like, kind of the red zone play, right?
Yeah.
We score a touchdown, and Josh Dobbs might never play, right?
Right.
Jaron Hall misses one throw, and he might never get a chance to start again. And it's just crazy, and that's cruel reality of the NFL and just life. But it's just like, it's crazy how he throws that ball 5 inches lower.
Yeah.
And he's probably still, who knows?
Or he gets hurt on the third possession.
Right. You never know. Right. You never know.
I mean, who knows? Right. But seriously, he would have been out there for another possession, and who knows what would have happened from there.
Right. It's just crazy how such a small thing can change the whole, whole scope of the season or narrative or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Just like the Minnesota Tim podcast, you were sick last week. If you weren't sick, maybe we would have been picked up by, iHeartMedia. And
tell you what, maybe we would have been.
Yeah. You never know. But instead, I just sat on my couch and talked to my phone by myself. It was great.
Well, that's the heart of a champion right there.
I had to get my reps in still. Yeah.
Yeah. You got your reps in. It's all about what's going on behind the scenes.
Yep. Well, I had to run a show ready, so I just worked through it myself. So
the marks of a champion.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode. Jacob, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to be back. We back. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great week. Enjoy Vikings football versus the Saints. Timberwolves, they back. We back. Hey, follow, rate, review. Appreciate you following and listening to this podcast. Everyone have a great week.